Feminism is a scam. A few years ago, I was an angry, blue-haired feminist. I once believed that male privilege was real and that I was a victim of the wage gap. Now that I understand the true motives of feminism, I know that this could not be further from the truth, and that modern-day feminism is a war on true masculinity. Before women had the right to vote, most were stay-at-home wives, which meant they weren't working jobs and couldn't be taxed. Our overlords didn't like that. Rockefeller started funding feminist campaigns in media, and as a consequence of the movement, women started entering the workforce and leaving the home. Children would then be separated from their parents and sent to Rockefeller-funded schools to be indoctrinated by the state. All of this ultimately disrupting the family unit at its core. Feminism is defined as the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. But in the West, I must ask, what rights do men have that women don't? Modern feminists are convincing women that hookup culture, using hormonal birth control, and not shaving is liberation. That toxic masculinity is prevalent and the patriarchy must be dismantled. Through movies and media, we're taught that working for the man, climbing the corporate ladder, and paying tax is more empowering and valuable than raising the next generation. Women have lost touch with our natural loving instincts, and birth rates are plummeting. Men and women are not the same. And by protesting for equality of outcome rather than opportunity, feminists are demonizing and emasculating men.
The definition of feminism is equality between men and women, if you look it up on Google. In this presentation, I'm going to prove to you that that is not the case. There was a first wave of feminism, the suffragettes, who campaigned for the vote and for equality, and then there was second wave feminism in around the 60s, campaigning for equality in domestic gender roles and things like that. And then recently there's been a third wave who have consistently lied about things. For example, the wage gap between men and women. That is a lie. 77 cents to the dollar is a lie. It doesn't take into account the different hours worked by men and women on average in jobs. It doesn't take into account the different jobs that men and women do. And it doesn't take into account many other factors. Once you factor all these in, it is statistically irrelevant. This is just one example of the lies by modern third wave feminism. Now, they've also created a rape culture that they put on society, that they've said, oh, there is a rape culture in the society. In a Western civilization, there is no rape culture. We put rapists in prison, and rapists, even if wrongly accused, their lives are ruined. They hate free speech. They don't like it when their opinions are challenged. They try to ban words like bossy, and they try to ban things on Twitter. They try to ban people from having their opinion. They don't like other people's opinions. The imbalances on people have flipped, and feminism says that it's about equality, but I've never once seen a feminist campaign against the fact that, on average, women, if they rape a man, they get 2 years, 3 years in jail, but if it happens the other way around, it's 20 years. Surely, if they're about equality, shouldn't it be the same for both genders?
Spread awareness of the red pill to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or perhaps millions of men worldwide to keep the united GTU movement growing. Anyway, the threat narrative that feminism has consistently fostered against men, as well as how big toe is simultaneously rebutting the threat narrative. This does not, however, completely undo the harm that political feminists continue to do. I appreciate you asking the questions. I find them amusing. When people ask me questions like this that invite free-form answers, as far as I can tell, Taz and Amraz pose a threat to feminism because they divert resources and attention away from women and put them back in the control of men. I can interpret that in a lot of different ways if I want to. The fact that we are aware of the injustices experienced by men is what feminists find most repugnant in us. And in many of these instances, we are showing how closely women are connected to the injustice. Not only do we contend that men often get the short end of the stick, but we also contend that women frequently cause harm to us mid-tower workers. In light of this, it takes our focus off of women and prevents them from getting the one thing they crave the most, namely attention. In an effort to reclaim the attention that has been diverted from them by this distraction, feminists are using a variety of strategies. The notion of where all the good men have gone is tied to the humiliation of wealthy, single, hot people who are enormous cows and who frequently do not even know how to make towels. Once a man understands that my GTU even exists, political feminism is trying to stop this from happening because it provides his system of legitimacy for his point of view. They don't want men to affirm their positions or uniqueness in ways other than those that the geocentric society as a whole has constructed for them. All of these women protesting in men's rights rallies are attempting to make men feel ashamed of them and link shame and low self-esteem with men's rights. Men benefit from the males' rights movement because it engages men with reasoned arguments. However, feminists don't care to hear justifications. They like to change the subject to anything else. Considering rape and the right of women to vote as both emotive and illogical, feminism is not about logical thinking. Unexpectedly, a woman called me yesterday and informed me that 653,000 women in the U.S. are victims of male rape. She claimed that she received this number from an unknown source, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who finds it difficult to accept her logic. I responded to her reply by stating that more men were raped in prison than outside of it each year in the United States. I'm sure I'm not the only one who finds it difficult to understand this woman's logic. I also questioned her on how she arrived at her figure of 600,000, saying that if she wants to compare the statistics, she should be aware that men are suffering just as much as women, if not more. In addition, I provided her a piece that The Guardian had written and investigated to support my case. She replied, "Well, that only demonstrates that males are even more repulsive than I thought. Not only are you guys abusing women, but you guys are also destroying the ecosystem. But on top of that, you two are abhorrently abusing one another." She basically said that she had conducted her own research and that she did not want to share it with me when I pressed her about her statistics again. She was attempting to arouse my emotions in an effort to shame me for being an MITTU guy. I was only attempting to ask her a few questions. She could only attempt to humiliate me for being an MIT in your eyes guy. And the best I could manage was to mock her irrationality. Allowing individuals to remain on the site to disseminate misinformation and animosity toward men was one action I took that wasn't very NICU of me. However, in this specific case, I tried to see whether she could back herself up with reasonable evidence, but in the end, she was unable to. My interactions with her were a complete waste of time. However, I chose to make light of the issue since I was curious about how she came up with the number 600. In order for MENA to advance, we must act like Star Trek characters like Lieutenant Data. We must show that we have no feelings for women in order for them to leave us alone. They are likely focusing on us because they think we have no emotions, hoping to evoke some form of reaction from us before we grow cold toward them. Because if people don't care, radical feminists won't get the government cash, affirmative action programs, and other privileges to which they are legally entitled. Radical feminism has arrived in apathy. Politics and feminism revolve around inciting men's emotions in an ineffective attempt to get us to act irrationally and lose control in support of their ideas. Encourage local men to counter the feminist menace as effectively as they can, because if we ignore it, women will not have the interactions with single straight men that they need to pest and badger in order to feel validated in their own existence. Since feminists only have other homosexual men and themselves to talk to, they never seem to realize that the majority of activists are opposed to homosexual men's rights or men's rights in general. If women and homosexual men want to maintain their authority, they must transform into common straight men. We belong to society. This holds true for all genders who think there is a gender pay gap, that women are paid less for doing the same type of work as men, or who think that rape is a cultural norm, and that all men are essentially abuser. Men must be made aware that every male harbors a monstrous beast that is just waiting to emerge and rape an innocent woman. They want us to feel ashamed of our feelings and our identity. They must therefore persuade us that every man harbors a hideous beast in order for us to change how we behave in order to more effectively please all of their demands. And IGTU won't act in such way. And because most of us are untouchable, we won't change our opinions. In order for the majority of males to succeed in achieving their goals, it is essential that they accept the myth that feminism oozes venom like a cobra. My GTA is aware of how important it is for them to accept this story as true. We don't buy it because it is a bunch of nonsense. In actuality, we're saying the exact opposite. Women are not important to us, and we frequently turn them away since they are more interested in our steadfast loyalty and hard work. The mid-tower is allegedly a threat to feminism because people think that you can either love or understand women. However, you can't accomplish both of those things at once, since doing so encourages men to make attempts to comprehend the nature of the female beast, which is something that women do not want men to understand. They want men's affection so they can round them up and utilize them to build houses, work on farms, and get paid with meals at restaurants. Shiva dudes are men who don't want to be herded around like sheep by feminist dogma. Success and failure go hand in hand because we are men, not mules. You males who don't want to be herded around like sheep by female dogma, mid-GT. We as a group fail because we don't organize into groups and stand together against the female narrative. We do well, nevertheless, in areas like peer-to-peer file sharing. We are some anonymous, decentralized, and GTA members. You can combat feminism by getting involved in the men's rights movement. However, this is not how the majority of MAG GTU members enlist. Only 1% of IRA members participated in the bombing attacks against the English, out of loyalty to their Catholic religion and culture. Even though I disagree with their methods, I commend the fact that 99% of their members performed support roles including cooking, providing safe houses, transporting people, and other such tasks. The same thing happened during the Second World War resistance movement in France. Men can passively find safety in big towers, while the MRA acts as a front for violent resistance. To do that, it eventually ran into American, English, and Russian heavy armor, but the resistance was still highly valuable at the time. Men didn't want to get involved, therefore the French resistance was unable to defeat the Nazis, yet the resistance was still very significant. You may consider MAGTA and NRAS to be opposition groups that are presently awaiting the arrival of heavy artillery. In the event that this scenario comes to pass, the man who took the blue pill is still dozing off while watching the feminist version of Pearl Harbor. The man who took the blue pill may then need to stand up and join MAGA and the MRA, as this will show. And once you do, you'll be able to convince lots of women to think differently about feminism. The struggle for gender parity will be equivalent to both the Waterloo and Stalingrad wars. It will be transported back to its original location. You must therefore wonder where this feminist Pearl Harbor will come from. Currently, I can envision a collapse in our consumer economy and society as the Black Swan event that will awaken the majority of blue pill males. The decision will then be whether or not to adapt to this new reality. Which should come first? Buying a pair of shoes for your whiny wife or food for yourself so that you may survive poverty and a financial crisis. If oil, natural gas, and other cheap forms of energy wind up being expensive and rare. Before his feminist wife can receive what she wants from him, the blue pill guy must make this choice. If you can't afford food and are constantly broke, what's the sense of having fornication every month? Things must get significantly worse before they can begin to improve. When that time comes, it will be our obligation to spread the word about our beliefs. Thus, we have no choice but to continue the resistance until that point. We are currently fighting feminism fiercely. However, we must alter our approach if we are to succeed and perhaps even create technology for artificial wombs. I have to admit that this has been one of my favorite topics to discuss. Of course, if we want to restore the power that politically correct feminism stole from us, we will have to be patient and recognize that our moment will ultimately arrive. In terms of where we are right now and where we need to be, I can also see the endgame. Additionally, there is much to say about why feminists despise MIT. This has to be one of my favorite subjects to talk about, I must admit. Feminists despise MIT AU for two reasons. Women's privileges have been taken away, and we won't participate in selfless deeds. I didn't want to reiterate the arguments made in that essay, so I won't. In their place, I believe it gives some of my own. However, if you haven't read this post yet, I strongly urge you to do so. We appreciate you taking the prescribed number of red tablets each day. I hope the rest of your day is good, and I raise a toast to you. To help us, please watch this video. Please subscribe and send this video to anybody you think will benefit from it the most.